Welcome to Around the Weird. Here's your host, the museum curator of the strange and unusual, Mr. Nothing.
Thank you, Mysterious Voice, and welcome back to Around the Weird, a booktube channel where I talk about all the unusual and out of the ordinary literature that I found in my travels. Today I want to talk about some poetry that I found, because it is Poetry Thursday, and today's poem is all about children, especially motherhood, I think, as well. I am referring to Before the Birth of One of Her Children by Bradstreet. For those who don't know, Bradstreet is an American-British writer. They lived in the United Kingdom before moving to America in the 1600s, and she's one of the first sort of American writers, American poets, came from a very puritanical world. I've talked about one of her poems before on this channel, pretty solid poem about talking to your books, your fictional books, she is pretty good at what she does. At least she's very intriguing at what she's trying to say. Don't have much else to say about her, so without further ado, let's talk about this poem. I will read it and do a little bit of analysis, and we'll move on from there. Before the Birth of One of Her Children. All things within this fading world hath end, adversity doth still our joys attend. No ties so strong, no friend so dear and sweet, but with death's parting blow is sure to meet. The sentence passed is most irrevocable, a common thing, yet so inevitable. How soon, my dear, death may my steps attend, how soon't may be thy lot to lose thy friend. We are both ignorant, yet love bids me these farewell lines to recommend to thee, that when that knot's untied that made us one, I may seem thine, who in effect am none. And if I see not half my days that's due, what nature would, God grant to yours and you. The many faults that well you know I have, let be interred in my oblivious grave. If any worth or virtue were in me, let that live freshly in thy memory. And when thou feelst no grief as I no harms, yet love thy dead who long lay in thine arms. And when thy loss shall be repaid with gains, look to my little babes, my dear remains. And if thou love thyself or lovest me, these O protect from stepdame's injury. And if chance to thine eyes shall bring this verse, with some sad sighs honor my absent hearse. And kiss this paper for thy love's dear sake, who with salt tears this last farewell did take. So that was before the before the birth of one of her children, not death. In terms of analysis, there's a little bit worth talking about in this poem. It is a bit hard to read because it's using a sentence structure in a version of English that we're not used to reading anymore. So forgive my struggles with trying to perfect that. But it does seem like, in terms of a narrative, the poem is merely someone talking to an imagined child. A child who hasn't been born yet, as it says in the title, talking about how death is inevitable and we must love with all we can for those who are still here, and remember those who are gone pretty fondly. Now that's interesting because this is the 1600s. The mortality rate was pretty high back then, so children died often in infancy. And people didn't really live that long. Just in general, like these people weren't taking each other for granted. They knew that they could lose someone that they loved tomorrow. They could lose a child tomorrow. And it's important to preciously love those who are close to us. I do find this to be a pretty enchanting poem for that reason. You see the theme of death show up pretty early in the poem. All things within this fading world hath end, adversity doth still our joys attend. No ties so strong, no friends so dear and sweet, but with death's parting blow is sure to meet. The sentence passed is most irrevocable, a common thing, yet inevitable. Very interesting. Death is an inevitability that you see in this poem. it's interesting because, we tend to remember people pretty fondly, but we also remember people's faults as well. And there's a note near the middle of the poem where the narrator is saying maybe not to do that, where they say, "The many faults that well I have, let be interred in my oblivious grave. If any worth or virtue were in me, let that live freshly in thy memory." Saying, if you think I have any faults, just try to forget those faults and remember me fondly, and remember more of my virtues than anything else, which I agree with in some cases, but not always. Some people are particularly terrible human beings and should be remembered as terrible human beings, and we should not try to paint over how somebody actually lived. You can see Anne Bradstreet kind of highlighting a certain way to remember a person, even if it's not necessarily that great. And then at the end of the poem, it's sort of talking more about remembering someone and cherishing them. And it says, "With some sad sighs honor my absent hearse, and kiss this paper for thy love's dear sake, who with salt tears this last farewell did take." I do think the rhyme scheme is particularly interesting in this poem. It's sort of couplet, so it rhymes harms with arms, gains remains, me and jury, verse, her, sake, take. It kind of helps the poem flow, although I wouldn't say the structure, because some of the lines are a bit longer than others, like using irrevocable, especially in the early part of the poem. I don't think it quite matches up with the structure or the syllables that are used there. That's the only downside of this poem that I would note. Anyway, so that was Before the Birth of One of Her Children by Anne Bradstreet. Pretty interesting poem. I do like exploring Anne Bradstreet's poems because a lot of people have noted that she's one of the better early American poets. And she, although she isn't immensely talented or anything like that, she does have a way of drawing you in, which I think is super important when it comes to poems. So yeah, I'll put a link to it in the description. Let me know what your thoughts are in the comments below. Otherwise, just say something about my review here or something I might have missed. Otherwise, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe so that more people can find out about this poet or this poem, or even Poetry Thursday if they want to talk about that too. And until then, I wish you the best of luck in your weird and future child talking to travels. Farewell.